All right, guys, we have another motorcycle in the ClevelandMoto series of affordable, fine, and culturally significant motorcycles. Motorcycles that you should know about if you're into motorcycles and that's your thing, which we certainly are around here. So what we have here is a 1967 Honda CB450. This bike was called the Black Bomber, and that's a great name. We gotta love it. Black Bomber is just very cool. It has a lot of visualization there. This is a very interesting bike, and it changed the motorcycle dynamic in the world because up until the mid-60s, the British had ruled things with their Triumphs and their BSAs and their Nortons, and this motorcycle came along, and back then, it was extremely unlikely a motorcycle was going to rev to over 9,000 RPM, and this bike did. It's a dual overhead cam 450, and this bike was producing 45 horsepower out of its 450cc motor. Now, if you think today that producing 100 horsepower out of a 1,000cc motor, that's pretty impressive even by today's standards. But let's set that clock back 50 years and think about what that must have been like in the mid-60s. And also, when the guys are out racing on the track on a 650-pound motorcycle, and some guy comes whipping past them on this thing at around 400 pounds or so with a motor that can happily spin out to 9,000 RPM. That's pretty cool. It uses a torsion bar suspension system for its valves so that they don't hang. You're not going to get the sort of that valve float that you would have at other motorcycles where they're going to be revving at that high RPM. Your valve's going to be hanging open. You're going to lose all your power. No, this valve train could close very, very quickly and keep the power on even at those super high 9,000 RPM. It's not uncommon today to have sport bikes that rev out over 14,000 RPM, but back in the day, 10,000 RPM was definitely something to write home about. This bike from the factory would have come with silver-colored rear fender, front fender, and side panels. It wasn't very shiny. It was pretty unspectacular. So what a lot of dealers did to try to make the bike more attractive, it was very common to find dealers that would go ahead and take these items and spray them gloss black to match the rest of the bodywork, so the bike didn't look like it was three different tones, because you've got the chrome on the side of the tank, the black gas tank, and with the silver-colored side panels and front and rear fenders, it did look a little weird. So a lot of dealers did that to these bikes. Really a fun machine. What's interesting about this bike is it's a 4-speed transmission. And we live in a world today where everybody's like, oh, well, it's got to have a 6-speed or I don't want to ride it. Well, our ancestors said if you've got 4 gears where they're supposed to be, that's what we want. And it wasn't uncommon back in the days, Harley Davidson's, Triumphs, etc., to have a 4-speed transmission. And this bike has absolutely no problem going well over 100 miles per hour with that 4-speed gearbox, because it's not afraid to go into that 7, 8, 9,000 RPM. And these bikes are a lot of fun to ride. They're culturally significant because this was the bike that really did quite a bit of ass kicking against the Harley Davidsons, the Indians, and the British motorcycles of the day. This bike came out and really did put Honda on the map from a racing standpoint. You could buy this bike, take it right to the track, and just start kicking ass on it. If you do want to scroll around, you can check it out. Everything's normal. This bike is from 1967, but if you jumped on this bike today after getting off of the standard motorcycle you're riding, nothing on here is strange. The left foot still does your shifting. The right foot is the brake. It has kickstart, but it also has an electric starter as well. Very easy bike to ride, very easy bike to live with. Honda was so far ahead and so forward thinking in this machine. It did not come from the factory with turn signals, but it was a kit that you could purchase to add turn signals to it. The bike has some very interesting gauges. The gauges do not, at that point they hadn't really developed the standard rule about the 2 separate clocks. Check out the sweep on these gauges. It goes from 0 to 10,000 right there, and it goes from 0 to 140 miles per hour there. So this bike had a very interesting sweep of its gauges. Right here you would normally have a steering dampener as well. So this bike was built with performance in mind. There was no question this bike was about to be a race bike. When they sold it to you, they did not have any idea about you using this as a touring bike or using this as a bar-to-bar bike. This was meant to be a sport bike from day one. The day they built it, sporting was in mind. Very, very cool bike. Really, really fun. Still actually remarkably easy to get parts for. So really a neat machine. Again, this is a $3,000 bike. So for $3,000, you can own this motorcycle. How are you going to get this motorcycle? You're going to go to www.clevelandmoto.com. Or you're going to call us here at the shop at 216-795-5580. You can ask us about the Honda CB450 Black Bomber. And you guys remember, ride fast and take chances.